So welcome to my short talk, and quite different to Suzanne's. I'm going to be focusing on higher education, so university level. So if any of you are university educators, so am I. But if you're not, these are just some general tips that I think could work for a range of learners, including college and some school learners as well. But yes, my name is Poppy Gibson. I work at Anglia Ruskin in Essex in England. And I've called my talk "Stop Doing University Teaching Wrong." If anyone's an Alan Partridge fan, I kind of took it from Alan Partridge, which is a famous British comedy where he says, "Stop doing Bond wrong." So I thought of how can we stop doing university teaching wrong? So I'm here just to share, in my opinion, what are some things that might improve our students' engagement and motivation, and ultimately our satisfaction as educators in our job. So in this session, I'll begin by thinking about how we generally can engage our students more, and I'm sure you're doing most of this already, but a particular nod to neurodivergent students and neurodivergent educators like me or some of you, and thinking how we can, within the boundaries of education, because of course we are bound by many boundaries and boxes, but to think how we can be more creative with our delivery to hopefully engage and inspire the ones that we teach. And then in the second part of the session, I'm thinking how we can do things right or better, because you might use many of these platforms. I get a feeling Suzanne is very proficient in all things tech, so she probably uses all of these. But again, just as Suzanne gave you a whistle-stop tour, I'm going to whiz through these 5 platforms that you can see on your screen. So Kahoot, Twitter, Insta, Menti and Padlet, and some of them you might use already if you're an educator. Some of them you might never have heard of, but I want to give you a bit of a twist on how you could use them a bit differently as well. So my hope is that if everyone goes away with just one tiny idea or one tiny spark, then, or even just one spark in the whole group, I will feel like I've done my job properly. But I thought just to start off, just with a little bit of interaction, and this is the only real bit of interaction I'm going to ask for, so then you can sit back and relax into my storytelling. But I thought for fun, in the Teams chat, and I'm glad that I saw in Suzanne's chat you were all engaging, so please join in with this. I thought it'd be interesting for you to share a GIF, so that's like a tiny funny video, how you normally feel at the end of your working day. Now, I'm aware most of us might be teachers, but if you're not, still please join in. If you've never shared GIFs before, if you go in the Teams chat, at the bottom you'll see a little block that says GIF. Type in the emotion or word, how you normally feel at the end of a day at your work, and share it. I'm just going to give us about a minute. And I thought it will help me read the room, how we feel generally in life with our job satisfaction. So do you feel exhausted at the end of your teaching day? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel excited? So yeah, get creative. I'll give you a minute and I'll jump into the chat and spread some loves and hearts on your responses. Gosh, you guys are quick already because there's already so many in here. Thank you everyone that's engaging. And I see Suzanne as well mentioned Snapchat. Yeah, fantastic. Suzanne, I've already tweeted about your talk today. I would love to hopefully continue some conversations with you in the future as well. So it'd be great to hear how you're using Snapchat. I'm loving these. I love the doggy and the fire GIF. We've got a range of emotions being shared in the chat. Some positive, some maybe not so positive. The comment that it depends on the day. Yes, I'm sure we can all agree on that. It depends what you're teaching and to who. Amazing. So please feel free, if you haven't shared a GIF yet or an emoji, we've got some emojis as well. Do feel free to keep putting them in and I'll check back later. But I can see that we feel a whole range of emotions as an educator, and I want us to think how we can hopefully feel more positive emotions most of the time, and a lot of that comes through continuing what we're doing right, and then thinking how we can adapt those things that aren't working so well. So on your screen, this is also a big takeaway, particularly for teachers here, because we don't always hear it, we are doing a lot right. So many things are working. Most of our students are passing their modules, their exams, their assignments, their courses. If you're at university level like me, we're seeing hundreds of graduations every year, hundreds and thousands. So many things are working right. But equally, some things perhaps are not working so well. And obviously the pandemic, I know we're all still feeling the ripple effects of the COVID pandemic, particularly at the moment. So my first years at uni, many of them, so the younger students, are those that didn't do GCSEs because of COVID lockdowns. So they've come to uni with a very different experience of our UK assessment system. And now they're having to focus at a different level. Suzanne saying she's still traumatized by homing. Same. I have 3 children too, and it was a struggle. Solidarity to you, Suzanne, and anyone else. And I think that struggle now is something I'm seeing more in my university classroom, because perhaps some of those social skills that normally my students would have had from their college or from their sixth form years were blocked out through lockdowns. So I'm often now seeing my students more reserved. I mean, I'm generalizing, but more reserved, more anxious. And I would honestly say that whereas pre-pandemic, if a student messaged me, so I course lead 2 primary education degrees. So I was a teacher for 11 years and now I run teaching degrees. But before COVID, if they contacted me, hi Poppy, can we have a meeting? It was normally to discuss their assignment. So they'd meet me and they'd say, I'm really stuck what to write on this essay, and we'd go through structure and content. Now when they contact me, it's because they're too anxious to be in the lecture theatre, or some are too anxious to leave their house. And this is a big mental health shift. And I guess we can't know, was it just the pandemic? But in my opinion, that certainly contributed. And you yourself might have felt it. I know, whereas pre-pandemic, I loved socializing. I was out all the time. And now I'm just so happy at home. I think for many of us, it flipped our perspective, made us so grateful for what we have. So I think our cohorts for many of us have changed as well. So what I'm hoping for us to think about today is how we can also adapt our pedagogy to suit this new kind of beast that is coming through our classrooms. But importantly there, you'll see the third thing on the slide. We do know education has boundaries as well. So it's kind of thinking what we can do within the boundaries we have, which are unavoidable, to still be creative, to still reach our students and make that connection, rather than, feel that we are too tightly bound by those boundaries. But that is part of our UK system. There are always going to be those boundaries and those rubrics and criteria. So kind of today, I'm just hoping I can inspire you to think of ways we can deliver things a bit differently within those boundaries. So for the first kind of 5 minutes, I just want to reflect upon what I, as a university teacher, think we might be doing wrong, including me. So things that I think maybe I'm learning to do better or could continue to do better. And I've kind of come into these 4 categories. I don't know if any of you will agree with me, but I thought maybe 4 things that we might be doing wrong at this point are the expectations. I'm going to break each of these down in a minute. So our expectations, what we expect of our learners, the communication. So not only what we're saying, but where we're saying it. So, very cool to hear somebody using Snapchat, but how often are you only using your virtual learning environment, whether it's Moodle or Blackboard, Canvas, whatever you're using to communicate? So are your students all really logging on? Or when you look at the back end, can you see someone hasn't logged on since September? They've probably missed your emails. They're probably not checking their uni inbox. So how can we communicate in different ways? And that's the main one I'll focus on today. Motivation. So again, how can we continue to motivate our students when most of them just want a degree at the end of it? So how can we keep that daily motivation going? And I'm just going to touch on flexible working, and particularly for anyone who's neurodivergent. So I have ADHD, and that's one thing that didn't suit me about the primary classroom, was the very tight boundary. One thing that I find now at university level is a slightly more flexible boundary, but thinking how some of our students might find certain patterns stifling. How can we have a more inclusive approach for everybody, including those with a disability and invisible disability? I recently did some research into how we make distance learning more accessible, with a focus on neurodivergent learners. So these are kind of 4 things I just want to reflect on before we get going. So first of all, expectations. And to be honest, if I give you one bit of life advice, just generally in life, I think have lower expectations, because often when we're disappointed, it's because we've hoped for a higher expectation, a higher outcome than happened. I've certainly noticed that with my own mum in life, you know, giving her a gift at Christmas, she never quite likes it as much as I imagined when I was buying it. The same thing in our classroom. What are we expecting for our students? Now, this is very different to having a high expectation of their outcome. We want all our learners to reach their potential, 100%. That's what I want for every learner. But on a daily level, on a Monday morning, as they come into my lecture theatre at 10 o'clock, what is my expectation of them at that time? And kind of what Lau was saying about depends on the day of the week as well. How should our expectations of students shift? More students than ever are working. Some of our students work several jobs. I met a student yesterday who's working 3 jobs. She's doing a full-time degree with me, and she's working 3 jobs. So what is our expectation also of their commitment when they're juggling jobs, caring commitment, parenting for some of them? So I've just put here a definition of expectation. And it's a strong belief that something will happen or be the case. But how often do we set a task? Like, for example, at my university, we always have to set pre-session tasks. So these are things we expect the students to do before they come to my classroom. So if your pre-session task is to read a chapter of a book, a journal article, to do a mind map of something, what I've learned is to really think carefully about how achievable is that task? Is that expectation too high? You know, if they're coming in on a Monday at 10, are they really going to have read the chapter before they come? And thinking, how can we make the task more manageable? So I've started to try and think about lowering that expectation. Now, recently, for example, I've been asking my students to join Twitter. Other platforms are available. And then one of my pre-session tasks is recommending a new person or company to follow for each of their pre-session tasks. So it's as simple as them typing in someone's handle and following them to lift them in a different way, bring them into new conversations, new knowledge. Whereas before I would say, read a chapter, and then, you know, you come into your seminar and you say, what did we think of the chapter? And 1 out of 30 students is it. Now thinking, actually, does that actually become a disservice to students by having the incorrect expectation of certain things? But as I say, this doesn't mean I have a low expectation of them. I have the highest expectation of my student. The expectation is more of myself and their workload. The second one is communication, and this is really what we'll talk about in the second half. How are we communicating with our learners? I know some of you might be primary education or secondary teachers, so slightly different because you have the parents and the carers to communicate with. Don't get me wrong, since COVID, I have a lot more parents of my adult learners who are all 18 plus contacting me as well, wanting to talk about their child. And I have to say, unfortunately, you know, now they're an adult due to GDPR, they need to be in on the conversation. But how are we communicating with our learners? So thinking for me with my adult learners, one thing that is a huge bonus for us. So we use Teams. I can see you're all here on Teams, so hopefully you're familiar with it. And we had a team staff chat that we used through COVID. I'm sure most of you agree, as I do. Teams is a very easy way to communicate with people. So we had a staff chat, and then I was asking, why don't we have a student chat? Why are we just using Canvas and their uni emails. And so I just made a year 1 group, a year 2 group, a year 3 group for each of my cohorts on the degrees. And you can imagine, just as we on Teams can communicate so efficiently and share GIFs, they now also communicate very efficiently and share GIFs as well. So finding the spaces where you can communicate best and it will be heard. And obviously we know not every student's going to engage on every platform, which will kind of lead into what we'll talk about in a minute. Spreading yourself where possible without exhaustion on the platform. Student on each platform, that's more than if you were just using your uni emails. So how are you communicating, and when as well is an important one, because one thing I learned is to stop answering emails at a certain point. And I think when we care about our learners, as we do, it can be hard to switch off. And you get that email in the evening and you think, oh, you know, I really need to respond. It's a student that you know, could do with your response right now. But then trying to think, actually, I need that downtime from being an educator as well. So one thing I've got better at is also putting my out of office on and making it clear when I'm back and who they can talk to in my absence. Actually booking leave, which I think from being a primary teacher, because I never could do that, I find that a bit tricky sometimes. But again, communicating to your students, but also letting them know when you won't be able to communicate. The third one is motivation, and this is a hard one at university, because for any university educators amongst you, you'll know that for some students, they're just coming for a degree. So once many of them, we normally find, so most of our modules are a trimester, so a term, and we normally show them the assignment at the start of the trimester. So we're really transparent, like this is what you have to write about. But we often find once they're confident enough in what they need to do, as you've nurtured them through the first few weeks of the trimester, then attendance starts dropping off about halfway through the term, because they know what they need to do now and they know they can write it and hopefully pass. So how do you grip those students who now feel that they don't need to attend because they know what to do? So there on my screen, I put FOMO, and I'm sure many of us know it stands for the fear of missing out. So what I've tried to do through my timetable with my students as a course lead at uni is think, how can I do things in my classes that students will still want to attend? And again, I never have 100% attendance. I'm realistic as well, and I went to uni myself and I remember when not attending everything, because that's part of being an adult and finding yourself and having control. But that's why I think if we can motivate our students to come even when they feel they know what to do for the course, because they know they're going to enjoy being with their peers, they're going to enjoy being with you, they're going to enjoy the learning, then that's how hopefully we can increase attendance. And again, I do that through some of the tools I'll talk about in a minute, but communicating what they missed. So the other day at the end of our seminar, we did a rainbow walk. So have any of you done a rainbow walk? It was a little mindfulness activity. And a lot of my students, I know they pretty much come to campus, go to Subway for lunch, come back to campus. They rarely look around the rest of our beautiful campus. So we did a rainbow walk. We finished our seminar 10 minutes early. And we took the students out into the campus and we said, you've got to photograph something red, something orange, something yellow, so all of the colours of the rainbow, and share them in the Teams chat. So make them into a little collage on a simple collage app, your rainbow in the Teams chat. And it was just really nice for students to do something in an outdoor space, in a different space, and share it. And then for those that weren't there, they could see that, oh, something interesting was happening. And, there were those taking funny photos, like for yellow, someone did the wet floor side, and then for blue, they did someone fallen over, pretending to be fallen over in a puddle. So, and then kind of hopefully shows your students that we're more than just a classroom, we're a community. So please come and enjoy being in our community. And so I think back to communication, it's how you communicate that will hopefully engage them to want to be part of it. And then, as I say, think about how you can be more flexible. Obviously, you want students to know what to expect when they come to your session, but also thinking how you can mix it up a bit. particularly for neurodivergent people who might find sitting for an hour without a break really tricky. How can you mix it up with a paired task, a group task, an outdoor task, go to the library task to mix it up? So just to finish, I want to give you a really speedy few minutes looking at the ways that I use some very popular tools to continue to engage my students, because I think this is a way we can stop doing university wrong, is thinking it's just what we do in the classroom that counts. It's really not. It's really not just the classroom that matters. When I go to college, I go to colleges and try and encourage students to consider coming to our uni. I know they might want to Google me. So think, if you Google yourself, I don't know if you ever Google yourself, what comes up? Do you have a visual profile? Kind of what Suzanne was saying at the start. Have you got Twitter? Or if you don't like Twitter, have you got another space where someone can find you and see all the amazing stuff you're doing? Because I know you're doing amazing stuff, but how visible is it to the outside academic world? So briefly, Twitter. I won't read all the slides, but I know Lau, I'm happy for them to be shared if anyone wants. Twitter is my favorite platform. I'm not ashamed to say it. Those of you that already I'm connected with will know I love it. I love it because it's quick. I love it because it's a way for students to expand their network. As I mentioned, I encourage them to join. They don't have to join, but many of them do give you positive feedback. And one way to flip it is hold a Twitter space. So if you haven't, feel free to contact me afterwards. I can talk you through it, but you just host an audio only talk as long as you like, and I've been inviting my students to come co-host with me, talk with me. And here's a recent tweet I did. So this was a book I published this week. You can see a lot of retweets, a lot of tract on that. So it shows my students as well, when they're like, why isn't Poppy replying to my email straight away? They can see I do other stuff. I'm not just their teacher, I'm doing other stuff as well. Lisa. So sorry, I just feel like a humble brag showing you that one, but to show, be proud of what you're doing. And that's why social media, I know we'll talk about social media later, is an amazing way to build your profile and show students what you do. Here are just a couple of stats from my recent spaces: 199 in one last week, 130 people in one the week before. So it shows that people do want to join these spaces. Instagram, so again, I'm not going to read the whole slide, but Instagram is a great way to share professional photos and videos. So I do keep my account professional. Mine's also private as well, so I can choose who follows me back. One way that I flip it is I make quick reels, which are short videos when I'm on campus. So again, reminding students when they're not on campus, like, oh, like we've got new fruit smoothies in the Students' Union bar, and remind them of all the things going on outside of the classroom that they can get involved with. Here's just an example of a snapshot of a reel. But again, if you want to come watch my reels, come follow me on Instagram. And it's just a way to show that you're proud of where you work as well. The next one, just very briefly to talk about, is Mentimeter. Lots of you might have used Mentimeter. I absolutely love it. It's a quick way to engage with students in an anonymous platform. And a way that I flip it is I email out a Mentimeter. You don't have to only do it in the classroom. You can make a big question and email the link out, and they can engage remotely. So again, just a way that you can stop doing university wrong is thinking it's just what's in the classroom that counts. Here's an example. We had a little class mascot at university level, and I just emailed, what should we call him? And they all voted for a name. Our questions aren't all that basic. We do ask some very high level questions about psychology and things, but just to show, think about how you can do things differently, not just in your classroom. Padlet, I'm sure lots of you know about Padlet, but a great storyboarding tool. Again, it's free. With the free version, you can have, I think, 3 Padlets, between 3 and 5. And you can just encourage students to pop stuff on. I think Suzanne had a Padlet, didn't she? So a way that I flip it is I get students to make the Padlet. We also make longitudinal Padlets. So I'll make one in week 1, and we'll add to it every week of a module, and we'll see how our progress grows, which is really satisfying. We'll add a different color ink every week. So we get to the end of a 12-week module and we're like, whoa, like we have learned stuff. And I think that's really nice, not just focusing on the assignment, but focusing on, you know, learning every day. A couple of examples here, and I'm aware I've got about a minute left, but on the screen you can see just how students have, yay, rainbow Padlet. I love rainbows, can you tell? Obviously, I'm a primary teacher at heart. You can take the primary school teacher out of the classroom, but so these are just some questions I popped out to students, and they put on their virtual post-it notes. And I recently had an EdTech review of Padlet published as well, so the link's here on the next slide. If you would like to read it. I talk about how to use Padlet for formative assessment. And last but not least, Kahoot. And I know I'm throwing lots of platforms at you now, but again, do contact me later if you want to chat through more, or just write them down and go play with them. Kahoot is a really fun interactive quiz tool my students love, and you'll know if you've ever played a Kahoot quiz, when the music starts, it's like dun, 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 dun. As soon as my students hear that coming through the speaker in the classroom, they know they're in for a good time. I often pair students up, so it's less competitive than one-to-one, so pair or group the students, and it's a great way for formative assessment. A way I flip it is I get my course rep to make the quiz for me, or set it as a post-session task for them to make a quiz. And here's just an example. The fun part is once you've done a Kahoot quiz, it gives you a podium, and you'll get a gold, silver and bronze medal for the top 3 people or groups, and you can celebrate them. And this is a really nice way to do that. So I see I've got some questions in the chat, so I'm going to take those now, but do feel free to contact me with any professional questions. My email is poppy.gibson. Find me on Twitter if you're not already. Find me on Instagram. Always will follow back and connect with you. So thank you.